David Hochberg told us about the former police chief of Buffalo Grove, Steve Casstevens, who is standing by on the phone right now. And before we tell you what his new path in life is, thank you for the service you did for Buffalo Grove all those years.
Well, thank you very much, Steve, and thanks for having me on show 260.
Yeah, number 260. Can't believe it took this long. How many times a day do people think your last name's Casstevens?
Since the 70s.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yes.
What it was
when you say it's Stephen Casstevens, then they're really confused.
Yes. And did you ever ask your mom and dad if they were trying to make it harder for you?
I suspect there may have been some alcohol involved.
I know you're doing community outreach as well. What is that? Tell me what form that takes.
After 46 years in law enforcement, and I've seen over those years a lot of interesting and sad crime scenes. Not all of them crime scenes. Suicides and unattended deaths aren't a crime. And I, through those years, met so many families that when we're leaving the scene as law enforcement, they look around and go, now what do we do?
Right.
And who comes in and cleans us up? And so that's really my job now, is I do community outreach for a company called Huuso Bio. And they are a biohazard crime scene incident cleanup service. They're headquartered out of Plainfield, Illinois. And we're the ones that, sadly, we don't want you to call, but when you have to, we're out here. It's an
absolute necessity. As you know, people are fascinated by true crime. It's the number one category in podcasts, for instance. Everybody wants to know about these stories, but people don't think about the fact that after something horrible has happened, somebody has to take care of that end of the business. You've seen these scenes as a working cop. Do you go to them now?
I will go to some of them now. Mainly, thankfully, my job is connecting with police departments, sheriff departments, state police, and also funeral homes and medical examiner coroner's offices, and just say, hey, here's information on our company. Here's what we do. When you encounter a scene and you talk to family, just please hand out our brochure and say, here's an option. Give us a call. We do this for a living.
It's a weird question. Is it expensive?
It can be. It depends on the size of the job, we'll call it, the area of wherever we're coming to cover, to whether it's a single-family home.
Sure. I don't want to sound, listen, you've got a cop's sensibilities. I don't want to sound like I'm price shopping here for a future crime.
But it's curious. It's really, it's
just fascinating.
Interesting, yeah.
Here's the most important part about the question you asked, Steve, is 99+% of the time, the entire cleanup is covered by homeowners insurance.
Wow.
Oh, see, that's good to know. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I didn't know
most people don't know that, so they try to clean it up themselves. And then what's sad is a month later, then they call us and we come in and clean it up properly.
Right, right.
Steve, what is I don't want to say the most notorious, but what's maybe the biggest cleanup that you've done, one of the biggest cases in our area?
As far as notoriety goes, not number of bodies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the brothers that I work with were part of the cleanup of the college shooting in DeKalb years ago.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
really?
Yes. Right.
Yes.
And again, I thank you for being a cop all those years. Mm-hmm. I think the people that are doing this work, I can't imagine.
Well, as you can imagine, we have an interesting turnover rate sometimes because we hire young people and we spend a lot of time and money training them. And there's an occasion they'll walk in their first scene, they'll turn around and walk out and say, I'm out, I can't do it.
Oh, I believe that.
Are there people that aspire to do this? And that doesn't make you a weirdo if you do, but aspire to do this because they're fascinated. It's like the forensic part of the police department.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And when we look at the sad stats of, and I actually saw this on a billboard going towards O'Hare on I-90 the other day, 63 people a day die by suicide by firearm.
Ugh.
63 a day. And then couple with that 60,000 a year of unattended deaths where, hey, nobody's heard from, Grandpa Joe for 4 weeks because he lives by himself and nobody checked on him and he died a month ago.
That's what always amazes me
Things
when
are real and they happen.
when I watch these shows and people say, well, yeah, so and so, we hadn't heard from them for 7 weeks or something. I guess just, you know what? Check on your neighbors. Check on the elderly.
Exactly.
Well, I lost my uncle to suicide. It was about a year ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in his 90s and he shot himself. And my brother in upstate New York lives in a very big, kind of an old mansion, kind of a rooming house, but an old mansion, a lot of college kids, a lot of older folks like him.
Yeah.
And there's been 2 or 3 occasions where people who don't have family necessarily died in their rooms, and people didn't know they were there in the last year.
And you don't know what to do at that point. Who do you call?
Right. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'll give you a real quick story. A couple of months ago, we were called to clean up a suicide in Indiana, and a woman lost her husband. He used a rifle to commit suicide. And she asked the sheriff deputy who responded, and they were leaving, who do I call for this? He goes, I have no idea. He goes, you should probably check Google.
Wow.
And so she did. The first company she contacted refused to come out, said, you're not in our area. The second company said their response time was 5 days.
What?
No.
5 days?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. To come out and clean everything up.
That's a 911 call, kids.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when she called our company, and thankfully she got our number through the coroner's office in Indiana, we checked her address, said, you're 5 hours away. We'll have a team there in 5.5 hours.
Yeah, how can you're out of our area?
2.5 days cleaning up the scene.
I can imagine. Mm-hmm. I can imagine. Well, Steve, I'm glad you got into something light and happy after police work.
Yeah. Yes, I needed a break.
We hope you never need his business. That's the strangest thing I've ever said in plugging something.
Yes.
But we hope people never need your company. But what's it called again?
It's called Huuso Bio, Huuso Bio. And our website's just huusobio.com.
Stay healthy. Thank you again.
Thanks, Steve.
And thank you. And Steve, you have an open invitation to golf with me at Bowes Creek any day.
Oh.
And Andrea, our dear friend Kristen Zeman says hi.
Oh, my
look at
girl. Thank you, Steve.
Andrea, I'm bringing
That's
you
awesome.
along if we play golf.
All right, we're doing it.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Four of us.
Appreciate it. 8:45. And thanks to David Hochberg who told us about Steve Casstevens.